Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Well, hello, everybody. Arizona does good business, and we want to talk about it. Welcome to the People and Profit Elevating Humanity Through Business, brought to you by the Arizona chapter of Conscious Capitalism. Conscious Capitalism is an international movement promoting business as a force for good. The Conscious Capitalism movement has 50-plus chapters across the United States, including Arizona. And actually, we're taking over the world because we have international chapters as well. Free enterprise capitalism has served to lift more people out of poverty than any other socioeconomic system ever conceived, empowering social cooperation, human progress, and elevating humanity.
We are working to change the capitalism narrative by shining a bright light on good business, telling the stories of conscious Arizona companies and encouraging others to follow in their footsteps. Good business is the answer to many of the global issues that humankind is facing, and that is what we will dive into on this show. We like to invite leaders in our community to share their stories and experiences and highlight that business has the potential to be a powerful force for good. So let's get started with those very conversations very quickly. Myself, I am Jeremy Neese. I am proud to be one of the team members for the local chapter of Conscious Capitalism.
And I'm Sarah McCraren, also a member of the Conscious Capitalism leadership team. And I'm always proud to mention my other gig, which is working with McCraren Compliance, where we offer safety training and consulting services, specializing in mining, construction, and transportation. And even more happy to talk about myself and my company. I'm really excited to introduce Andy Shirk. And Andy is the Executive Vice President at ESI. He's delighted to lead a company aligned with the principles of conscious capitalism and is also a supporter of local first. Prior to joining ESI, Andy led True Roots development for 7 years, advising business owners throughout the valley. Kindness, curiosity, and wisdom are his core values. His greatest joy is serving people with warmth and compassion, which is the bedrock of his career. Whether as a business leader, playing the upright bass, we'll definitely have to ask a little bit more about that, in the local music scene, and he genuinely loves to create settings for others to shine. And I'll just tell you a little bit about ESI because I know we're going to talk a ton about that as we get into our conversation. But ESI is the leading provider of employee staffing solutions for Arizona school districts, as well as assisting governments and colleges. It was founded in 1999 by 3 educators, and ESI has a passion for helping people and making a positive impact in education. That's sort of the basics for everybody, and now we can just dive right into conversation. So, Andy, maybe starting just a little bit more about you. I love that you're curious, and that always is the setup for great conversation. But maybe a little bit more about your background, what you loved most about the leadership development and how that's translated into what you're doing with ESI.
Oh, thanks, Sarah. Jeremy, you guys, it's great to be here. I'm super excited to spend a little time with you today and just talk about some of the important things that for me, I know conscious capitalism, profits, people, culture, all of that's super important. When I think back to starting out this wonderful professional journey of mine, early on, I got to work in higher education and helping student athletes develop skills to be better people. And that was through a program the NCAA founded called Life Skills. And through that, it was kind of interesting. They knew that, hey, we do a pretty good job helping these folks get ready for classes, and they do pretty good on the field. But what about life? What about trying to find jobs? And so I did that for a good long time before joining the corporate world and the exciting always thrilling world of cell phone towers.
Ooh, yes.
Right? That'll stop a cocktail party in its tracks.
I've seen both cactus towers and pine tree towers, so that is certainly a diverse, exciting area.
Yes, yeah. But super good time for me, because in 1999, when I started in that world, little did I know that BlackBerry phone would someday become something that everybody had. So to be in the cellular, communication infrastructure in the early 2000s was a great place, because basically even my boss at the time, when he interviewed me, said, "Hey, bud, you got kind of a short haircut. Were you in the military or something?" And I said, "Yeah, actually I was." He goes, "Great, you're hired." And I was like, "But I don't know a tower from a telephone pole. Like, what is this?" And he said, "No, it's all good." Little did I know that they had just bought Motorola's towers the prior week. So basically I had a pulse, and they're like, "Dude's good to go. Put him in." So but thankfully through that, the best part was having the opportunity to be in a growing business where I got to do everything from real estate to construction to sales. I even, God forbid, they put me in charge of finance for a couple of years, which is terrifying, right? But it was this great time to learn a lot about business and learn a lot about people. And through that process, I had a ball, learning some things. And so that's how I founded True Roots Development, because I got to a place like a lot of independent business owners out there where you say, "Hey, man, I love the corporate life, but I want to get out there and do something special for the business community here in Phoenix." And so for 7 years, I advised small business owners and medium business owners all across the valley, and some cases around the U.S., and tried to pass along some of those Jedi mind tricks that I learned from my corporate life. And it was fantastic right up until I met this really, really amazing guy by the name of Phil Tavasi, who's the owner of ESI. And he hired me to consult. But before the time I was done with that iced tea that I was having with him, I knew I was going to be joining these folks full time. And my master's is in education. My heart has always been in education. So to have a chance to do both, have an impact from a business perspective and for education in Arizona, and then throw on top of that, these folks had the DNA of conscious capitalism at their core. So it was like triple threat for me. So super excited. But that's how I find myself here today.
That's
well,
great.
I definitely at some point want to even if it's after we're off the air, I need a couple Jedi mind tricks, because I have, teenage boys all around me. And so, you definitely got to drop some of those.
Yeah.
And do you still have an original BlackBerry in your museum or anything to help commemorate those days?
Dude, I hate to admit this, but honestly, if there was a BlackBerry right now, I'd probably still use it. I got some big mitts and the little keyboard. I definitely, when younger folks see me working on that, they get a laugh, because I'm like ASCII speed. I'm like hitting the 1 to find A, B, and C. So it's ridiculous.
That's great.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. I'm about 50% accuracy on thumb typing. Not very strong.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. And what a great foundation to launch into all of these enterprises that you've been blessed to see. Your bio sure reads servant leadership, and it sounds like your comments about the team at ESI that founded that reflects that. Can you share a little bit about what the organization does to, service in that way, to show up every day as servant leaders, as the executive group?
Yeah, well, at its core, ESI, as Sarah so well mentioned, their job is to help staff public schools. And they are an Arizona company, founded in Arizona, still in Arizona, serve Arizona school districts. And if you're at all associated with education, you know that Arizona has a tremendous shortage of teachers and other people in the education field. A lot of reasons for that, but basically, even ESI at its soul level is a servant company, because we're trying to find ways to ensure that no classroom goes unfilled out there, which is a tremendous objective to have. But basically, ESI does that in two ways. One is we help staff substitute teachers, a group of folks that just don't get enough love in this world. And the second way is we help retirees transition that are getting close to that sort of retirement level where they're ready to go, but they're not quite ready to leave the classroom. And so we have a program where they can continue to teach and still receive their retirement, which gives them a little bit of a financial boost right there at the end of their career when, as we know, teachers could use all the financial boost they can get. So the way to help them that way, as well as help staff substitutes, that's really where it's at. And then that mission kind of transcends itself into, I guess you'd say, the leadership suite here, in the sense that we're both at service to those public school districts as well as the taxpayers that fund them, but as well the people that work here. Is that, in order to have alignment in all those areas, it's definitely trying to find ways to be at service in many different ways.
That's great. And I would imagine that if we were having this conversation 6 or 8 months ago, perhaps the issues that were on your whiteboard and the challenges you were navigating would be a little bit different. It must be a busy time in your offices. That might be an understatement.
Yeah, we had just wrapped up acquiring our the next biggest competitor, a wonderful company called Smart Schools. They've been operating here for a number of years in the Valley, and the owners there decided they were ready to about retire. And so we closed that, I think it was right there in the end of February. And so, yeah, imagine that. We had an entirely new group of clients that we had not worked with in the past that we were able to serve. But then, there's all of these problems with COVID and the pandemic and the tremendous impact that's had on our schools. It has been a handful, but hopefully we're helping out.
I'm sure that's the case. Did I see that you have 7,000 substitutes in your Rolodex?
We do from time to time. It's forever, as you can imagine, with snowbirds and so forth. That number comes and goes. But at any given time, we usually have 7,000 folks that we work with in that way. And across, 60 school districts across the state, as well as in our retirement programs, we work with 120 school districts there too. And that's most of the school districts in Arizona. It's quite a few folks.
Well, how does the mix work? Like, what are most of them in your retire program, or is it a big mix? Or, I'm just curious what that looks like.
Yeah, great question, Sarah. So we've got about 1,200 any given year. We've got about 1,200 return to work retirees that work with us, and they're generally in full-time regular teaching or administrative or classified positions within the school districts. And then separate from that are those 7,000 substitutes. So those folks are the ones that you traditionally think that are serving those, where people are absent, or maybe they've left the classroom for a few months to start a family or whatever the reasons for their absences. But the substitutes are separate from the retirees.
You notice where the school system to the clients, where do they ever offer a preference? Or they're always like, hey, you really got this, figured out with this, retiree return to work thing. Those are the people that we want, or they're just open to everybody?
Yeah, it's another good question. We built the company, actually, and I say we, the owners that originally founded it. It was founded as the retirement return to work program. But then what happened was the different changes with the ACA and all those folks out there that are listening that are way into insurance and benefits, they'll probably understand, right, that Proposition 206 here in Arizona that required paid sick time and all of that, the school districts are like, wow, that's a lot to figure out. ESI, you're pretty good at that. Like, would you guys do our substitutes? And so that's how the substitute program started, was the districts came and said, hey, we could use a little help on this stuff. It's getting a little bit crazy to keep up with, especially for, substitutes that are part-time workers. So you put that together and that's where it's at. But they are kind of separate in the sense that a lot of school districts will say, hey, I've got some experienced teachers and I want them to stay here, experienced administrators. That's how they get involved with our program. It's called Retire Rehire. So that's the return to work program. And then again, separate from that is the substitute program. And those are the districts that say, hey, we've got substitutes here, but we'd really like some help managing them. And then, oh, by the way, here recently, as it's been happening, we've got to find some more of those folks. So we're having to get really good at figuring out how to recruit and invite people to join that profession.
So that's a question that comes top of mind for me, it's piling right after that we're operating at a time now. Obviously, one of the core tenets of conscious capitalism is stakeholder orientation and trying to keep in balance, a working balance of the needs of everyone at the table and not outweigh one over the other. And it just seems like there's a whole bevy of scenarios and issues and challenges that you guys must be navigating right now. And I'm sure you're actively recruiting more folks to be part of the solution as the schools are reopening and are likely juggling their casts of players. I know firsthand. Our school was kind of on a floating schedule on when there was going to be an option for the kids to return back. And last week they made the announcement that this would be the week that the doors would be open. And I think they lost 5 to 10% of the teachers upon that announcement. The core of the question is, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in trying to, at the same time, recruit people and keep people safe and contribute to this challenge that we have as a community of what do we do with our kids and the families that are supporting them and the teachers and the whole ecosystem?
Yeah, you've definitely hit on it there. I mean, the challenge is we can't have it both ways, in the sense that right now there's sort of this, do we open, do we not reopen debate that goes on, right? And the problem is there's costs on both sides. I mean, if you reopen, obviously there's a risk to the students and the staff. If you don't reopen, there's costs, as every parent out there knows, to their children and their educational trajectory. And that's for those folks that are on track. There's obviously people in our community, in the Arizona community, that don't have a lot of the basic needs, and the schools fill that gap, whether it's food or whether it's social connection or whether it's even safety, a safe place to go during the day. All of that's not happening. So when I hear the debate rage on, I say, yes, you're both right. There's tremendous cost and pain on both sides. And the answer to that is I'll just put it this way. I could not possibly be a superintendent right now and try to navigate it,
No, there is no winning answer there.
You can't. But for us, the best that we can do is you ever notice in a crisis that people really seek information and some amount of certainty as much as they can, right? And so the way I see ESI filling that role is to try to be a source of strong, solid, consistent information and connection. And oftentimes when people are faced with this much uncertainty, that's where fear comes in, right? And so people become afraid and they become very nervous. And then even the slightest things on either side of the issue become extraordinarily inflammatory. And for us, we say, hey, we don't know the answer, but we know each school district has to find their way. But for those hundreds or dozens, or even in some of these smaller districts where there's only 1 or 2 folks that work with us, the best thing we can do is stay connected and help serve as an additional advocate for them to talk to the district and say, hey, what are you guys doing next? What are you doing for safety? What are you doing for connection? Have you communicated with your folks lately? Because in the midst of all of the planning and the chaos and trying to serve parents and students, I mean, it's no easy place. So one place for us to be of service is just to ask the right questions and then provide that information, consistently out to our folks. I think one of the best examples of a conscious capitalism trade-off, there's always these trade-offs that we have to deal with in conscious capitalism, is early in the spring, to set this up for you a little bit. As you can imagine, right, schools just had to close. I mean, it was scary, right? Everybody just closed the schools, sent everybody home. Well, all of our substitute teachers in those cases, now they don't have any more assignments. So full-time teachers, in large part, they were found ways to keep them working or at least keep them getting paid. But all the substitutes are suddenly out of work. And then simultaneously with that, as we know, everything that happened in Washington, right? Tremendous amount of chaotic response as far as what happened with unemployment assistance, and all of the CARES Act. And it was like, wow, it's so hard to keep up, right? So here's one of the trade-offs. My employee services team, those are the folks that talk to those 7,000 people all the time. They're a wonderful group of people, so compassionate, right? They're getting calls like crazy with people so upset. Well, I recognized that one of the ways we could help was to try to communicate what was happening in the unemployment assistance area. So imagine Andy, here I am, I got my little conscious capitalism thing behind my head. And I'm like, yeah, trade-offs, let's do this. We can find win-win, right? I'm like, hey guys, we need to help our substitutes understand the unemployment process. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, we don't have anything else going on, right? So it was an easy sell because these people that I have here, I mean, our employees just love the people that they serve. And they're like, heck yeah. In fact, at a point, we almost had to pull them back because I was afraid perhaps Governor Ducey would try to recruit them to become part of the unemployment system because they learned so much about it in order to communicate to the substitutes, say, I know I can't put you to work right now, but maybe we can help you find the unemployment assistance that is out there for gig workers. And that was a really crazy time. So that was a moment when, again, normal company would be like, hey, let's try to minimize the amount of phone calls we're getting. And I think in a conscious capitalism example, it wasn't that. It was like, how do we get more phone calls and how do we help more people? And certainly not the best thing for sanity or profits in terms of the way we had to work folks, but it was the right thing to do, and that's, I think when you look at the crisis, there's all these opportunities, and that was just one example for you.
Oh, that's a solid one. That's really impressive. Because, that's the theme right now, right? Is we have to be adaptive and we have to, this scenario is just playing out so dynamically. And I love how you saw the opportunity to be of service. And that's a great example.
Yeah, I like it too, because you see, it's like you recognize that your role is to both sets of stakeholders, right? And so, yes, you have to serve the schools and you're filling a need with this pool of substitute teachers, but you also recognize that you're serving them as well. And as soon as their needs completely changed, you said, okay, so even though we weren't set up to serve your new set of needs, we're gonna adjust, because you have a new set of needs, so we now have to have a new set of solutions. And then from a pure business perspective and looking at the long-term sustainability of ESI, keeping those people as whole and as healthy and as their well-being and their sense of safety as high as possible is going to be the quickest way for you to also rebound when your other stakeholders, the school systems, are ready to bring them back. And so, yes, it's great to look at it, and we should look at it. I think the very first thing should always be, how are we serving our people, all of our people? But again, from just a business perspective and the health and what's right, looking for the future of ESI, it was to make sure those people were ready when you need them. So great. And that actually leads me into my question, where are these people now? So now we're back in the fall. What is this the status of these 7,000 people, and are they still waiting in limbo? Are some portion of them able to go back, or what does it look like for them today?
Yeah. Oh boy, it is a wild time for them, and it continues largely to be, as you said, limbo. Unfortunately, right, it really depends upon the school district. In some cases, the districts that are open have a small need for what we would call a daily substitutes. And those are the folks that would, come in on a moment's notice. Hey, I got a doctor's appointment. I need a sub. And the sub comes in and takes over the class, right? Well, without in-person education and just the general sort of crisis nature that we're in right now across the school districts, there's not a large need for them. And that breaks our hearts in the sense that for those substitutes that want to get back in the classroom, they're unable to. But at the same time, right, we've got a group of substitutes that are largely the retired teachers, right? The average age of my substitute population is 56, and I have the most number of substitutes that are over the age of 60. And they're wonderful substitutes. In fact, many teachers that join us as substitutes that were teachers for 30, 40 years, they love it because they get to just do the teaching part and they don't have to worry so much about the lesson plans and all that other stuff. So the problem with them is they're saying, hey, I do this because I love this, but, it's too scary for me. It's too dangerous. I don't want to go back. And then everywhere in between, right? So it is limbo would probably be the right word. That if you were to call all of those people, if we got a whole bunch of phones and we call all 7,000 folks, you probably get 6,000 different answers, and it would probably be some semblance of, gosh, I need to feed my family. This was my job. This is how I made a living. I got to get back. I can't wait to get back. Right up until until there's a vaccine, I don't want to go back. And that all of that is certainly challenging. Each person kind of is trying to figure that out for themselves. But I do look forward to the day when we can, and I say this very, very intentionally, safely reopen in-person education, because nothing beats in-person education, but it's just got to be in a way that is as safe as possible and minimizes those risks. So until that happens, I know I've got a lot of folks suffering right now.
Are you able to serve the schools in remote capacity? Like, are any of your people able to kind of step into that, virtual role? Because I imagine people still get sick and have doctor's appointments even when, they're teaching via Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. So there are a group of folks that within those substitute populations. So, for instance, if we took a given school district and said, hey, they have, let's say, a bigger school district, they have 300 or 400 substitutes that usually fill these absences. A lot of the school districts have reached out to them and sort of recruited a small percentage of that group and said, hey, we'll get you up to speed on the online software and virtual teaching techniques, and done some advanced training. And then those folks are serving. Unfortunately, it's a smaller group percentage of the larger group, but yeah, that does go on.
And then I think that, it's probably a little bit more on the normal operation size, but it sounded like such like an incredible program. It was one of the things that I just really, really wanted to ask you about. And that is the international opportunity, right? Like you have a program where you bring in teachers from all over the world and find positions for them in an educational setting. And that, to me, that's just great. Because there's not only, it's a great experience for the teachers, but that just brings so much into these classrooms. To you talk about, how do we, bridge gaps and understand each other and, tolerate and, love other cultures. Well, you bring them face to face, right? So it's just seems like such a great service. So I would just love to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, this will probably do the interview. This will be the next half hour right here. I'm so excited about
Told you to wait on that one, Sarah.
You gotta.
Sorry.
So the story goes on this. If as you know, there's teacher shortage here in Arizona. There's a lot of positions that need to be filled, and there's a few companies that do a fine job recruiting teachers from all over the world to join us on a J1 visa program to work in those school districts as teaching positions. Interestingly, we noticed a lot of those folks are from various parts of Asia or India and the Pacific, and they do a wonderful job. And so we were, and I say we, some of the members of the leadership team were down at a meeting down close to the border and could see like this idea. You're looking at these students that are Latinx that are 40%, right, of our students, maybe more in Arizona are of Latin descent. And so there's this idea that we had early on that was like, hey, what if we had this crazy idea and recruited J1 visa teachers from Latin America, because so many of our students here have that cultural connection. And what better way to teach a bilingual class or to teach even, English learning classes than from somebody who has a similar background. So just imagine us a few years ago saying, hey, Department of State, can we get some J1 visas to bring people up from Latin America, right? Probably not the greatest timing, but it was the greatest idea. And we're working through that right now with the Department of State and hoping to get approval, because our plan is, and we've already established partnerships with Mexico and Guatemala and other Latin American countries so that we can create a connection and bring highly qualified, very advanced teachers and have them come here to help teach some of those classes, and then also set up opportunities for our Arizona teachers to enjoy time there. There's so many cultural connections between our various communities that there's nothing but benefit to be gained from that. Extremely difficult from a logistical perspective, and we're still very patiently waiting for an approval from the Department of State, but we have great support from the leaders here in Arizona, as well as from all around the U.S. that have said, hey, this is a really good idea because there's so many different ways that this could make things better for the student. And oh, by the way, the teachers are going to gain a lot too from getting to teach here and learn more here. And there's certainly plenty of opportunity for those classroom positions, and that most school districts can't even fill all their existing roles. So it's probably the classic win-win-win when we talk about conscious capitalism. I mean, even from a global perspective, talk about everybody having something to be gained from this. So we're super excited about it and going to stay very aggressive about trying to get this program going.
Well, that's great. And you mentioned it's, maybe not the best timing from a logistical perspective, but I would say from a cultural perspective, it is the best timing. And so, I'm glad to hear that, you guys are so invested in this, that you're going to continue the fight and see it, all the way there, and be patient and be forceful and do all at the right times to make it happen. Because, I think we see your vision, and we would really like to, see it in real life. So yeah, we can't wait. In fact, hopefully at some point in the not too, distant future, we can bring you back on and we can talk, talk more about how it's actually going.
Absolutely. I'd love to. We're so excited about it.
So I'm real curious, as you continue to outline sort of the anatomy of your organization, and you had mentioned earlier when the COVID first hit that your employee services group engaged and helped cater information to your group, your substitutes specifically that were out, and it just made me think of all the various elements that you have that are sort of, I don't want to call them silos, but different groups that you have that you are serving as an organization. So you've got these substitutes that are sort of very dynamic. They could be in any school on any given day. You've got your retirees, or if I understood, some of those are sort of full-time, just outplacement into organizations where they're part of your culture, but they're also part of that local school. You're talking about bringing in these foreign workers. You've got really quite a bit of different folks that you're catering to. Like, how do you go about approaching those cultural things? Like, how did that employee services group come to be, and what do they do every day? And how do you keep track on all of that? How do you make these people feel like they're ESI, but also servants to ultimately the end users, the students and the schools and the families? How do you balance all that?
Yeah, it's a great thing. It's kind of funny. We throw around often the term ESI family, right? I know a lot of businesses do that. They'll say, hey, we're kind of a family business. ESI is a family business. They were founded as a family business and continue that way. So we've never lost that. And so, I think much like a family, right? One of the best things you can do is just think about each other, be able to talk to each other. So that for instance, this employee services team, their job is to really be there. It's kind of a running joke that I have when I'm talking to folks that are thinking about joining ESIs. I'm like, hey, we're not like some big company. When you call us, you get a voice there. Like, you don't have to go through a phone tree with 30 prompts and there's an electronic voice there and all that. And if you send us an email, you get a response. And they're like, so the ESR team, those guys are really focused on being that voice at the other end of the phone. And even so much so that we've much to their chagrin, it was a big thing. But we had picture day, right? So we had to take pictures of everybody, and we try to put that in all of our presentations and everything to say, hey, man, we are people, we are your neighbors, we're part of the community, and that's where we kind of get the full circle. Is that oftentimes the folks that are calling us from all over Arizona, they are likely the neighbors to the same people that we're living next to, right? They're the ones that are teaching the children that are in our neighborhoods. And so, it really is an ecosystem in the sense that all of us will benefit together by good, solid education, and we'll all suffer when there's misses. And so I know that in the hearts and minds of this team, when they take these calls, which sometimes are pretty challenging, people calling upset or whatnot, they really do look at it. They're helping a member of their family. And we try to keep that something that we joke. Now, I don't know if that makes me the weird uncle. I like to say I'm the guy that shows up. I don't know. But they do a fine job with that. They're super cool.
Wasn't the weird uncle everybody's favorite anyway? Right? Yeah.
Well, entertaining at the least.
Yeah. Well, isn't that always the favorite? You want to be entertained. So I heard, this is, about people and people, profit, and purpose and profit. So I'm pretty sure I heard, the purpose that you're using to motivate and help keep people, sustain your people, and when they have the hard days, how do they get through? And it seems pretty clear that it's the purpose of having a healthy education in our community, right? And so just your whole team getting behind the idea of we're such a critical part of the education infrastructure, that if we want to ensure that Arizona or and beyond, that all of our children and our community's children, that they're getting the quality education they need, we're a critical piece. So we have to be here every day. We have to have the hard conversations with our with our partners and dissatisfied for whatever reason or another. Maybe we have to put in the long hours here and there, and especially getting through everything that's going on right now, because again, it's that underlying purpose of, because we're part of this ecosystem, we're that critical piece to ensuring that we have high quality education. And certainly we could just go on and on about the ripple effects of quality education, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, you hit on it best, Sarah. You use that word. I love it. It's purpose, right? And we've all, I don't know, most people have done jobs that maybe lacked a little bit of purpose. And then when you get to do a job, when you're blessed like we are with a job that has built-in purpose, it is almost unfair when I have to go ask people to join ESI, because I can say, hey, we take good care of you. But more than anything, every day you wake up, you have purpose. And that what you do here has a true impact on the community. So I know it's for us, it's almost an unfair advantage in the sense that all of our activities and everything that we try to do has that underlying purpose that quality education improves a community. That's end stop. There's no debating that. And so for us, there's no part of our business that is like the negative drawdown, because we look at ourselves as being very good at what we do. And so part of that means that we're super efficient at what we do. So that means that the taxpayers' money that they're investing in the school system, we're using that in a way that actually stretches that dollar further. So even though we're getting paid, we're really good. So we're stretching those dollars out. As opposed to every school district having to figure out the things that we figure out. Now we have 7,000 of these folks, right? So we're good stewards of taxpayer money. We're taking care of students and we're taking care of the employees here, all under the umbrella of purpose. You can't beat it. Really, really, really lucky that way.
I would imagine today is mixed with both a great deal of opportunity. We've got historic unemployment, which means there could be lots of candidates to pull from. But at the same time, you've got a very gun-shy group to a certain degree of, what do I want to be part of? How close do I want to get to all these things? How are you? I don't want to trivialize that. I assume there's other challenges you're working through, but walk us through some of the things that are happening in your boardroom discussions right now. How are you moving forward through this time?
Yeah, it's you probably touched on it. One of the things, one of my biggest priorities beyond the safe return of our existing staff is trying to think about ways to simultaneously invite other people that might not have considered education to join us, with this concept that not only will we invite these new people to join us, but we'd like to continue to elevate the profession. That there's, as I mentioned, that purpose piece, right? When you're a substitute teacher, there's not many flexible jobs like that where you can take jobs when you want, when you don't want, and have built-in purpose. If you're a gig worker out there and you're thinking about, hey, it's okay driving these, takeout meals and stuff like that. Nothing wrong with that. That's good stuff. But imagine making that same kind of money, changing some kids' lives, right? So it's a pretty compelling thing. But at the same time, it's scary. I mean, I can remember sometimes maybe I wasn't the best with my classmates to the substitute that came in there. I was always trying to be class pet as much as possible, but, people are pretty tough. So a lot of people that haven't been in education, they're terrified of the idea of getting in front of the class and having to lead that class. So I've got this sort of problem in the sense that my company and we are trying to figure out how do you invite other people to join the realm of this wonderful profession where you do get to serve students. And part of that is trying to understand the different kinds of folks that are out there. And for the marketers that are listening in, right, it's marketing in the truest, most compassionate sense, right? You got to understand the demographics and the psychographics of the people that you're trying to talk to. So right now, I recognize that most of my substitutes are generally retired folks. And I know there's some ways I could reach out and invite them to join, but they're probably not quite as interested as maybe some folks that are in other areas that are younger that might say, hey, you know what? I don't have the comorbidities or the extra problems that would cause me to be really concerned. And I feel like I could get into a classroom sooner than not. And so for us, it's about how do you then appeal to those folks, right? So we're working, flexing our muscles, trying to learn more about online advertising, but also, kind of hitting on that Peace Corps thing that they've had for years, right? The toughest job you'll ever love. Like, yeah, it's not the best time to enter the classroom, and it's certainly not an easy job. But the thing is there's so many of our younger folks in their 20s and 30s that would say, man, that's what I want. Like, I'm sick of waking up feeling like I don't have a meaning in my life. Well, come join this. And that's what it's about. So with that, we also have to balance it with the requirements of education and the requirements of certifications and things like that. But that's the part where ESI can kind of help them understand what the process is and not be quite so scared. And also hopefully make it easier for them to consider, like, hey, when you do get up in front of that group of kids, man, they're just looking for some love and some attention. And so you provide them with that. It's not nearly as scary as you think it is, you know? So we've got a lot of work to do because we got to figure out how to bridge all those gaps. But I would love nothing more than make the best out of this situation, is to perhaps elevate the profession simultaneously with inviting people that might not have considered, you know, education as a profession to come join and try it out and see. And you know, the folks that will do it, you know, they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it because it's a passion. And
right.
It's I wish it was both, but for the time being, my hat goes off to them, and I would love more folks to join us.
That's great.
Well, yeah, I totally love that you know, correlation to the Peace Corps, and you know, I hadn't thought about it because, of course, I'm not as close to it as you are. But there is a need, and hopefully in the very short term, a need for a certain, you know, group of people to maybe step up. Well, step up because we need them, because they're in a lower risk group than other people are. And like we were talking about before, it's really, there's so many social and community benefits to being, and developmental benefits to actually being in person. And then now, like you're saying, that if there's a portion of the population where this is a much higher risk, and there is a portion of the population that there's a much higher risk. So now we have this need that needs to be filled by a new group of the population. And now you talk about this Peace Corps, you know, type thing. I mean, I'm just, you know, I know on Zoom, you know, no one can see it, but I'm like, you know, getting closer and closer to be like, wait. So anyway, so you've totally got me hooked. But now the question, and you touched on it, but I just want to know more. You know, what services do you provide to bridge the, you know, that gap of not just the fear of the unknown. I've never thought about this, I couldn't do it, but the actual logistical piece of how do they become qualified? So if they're, you know, delivering food and we've got a better opportunity for them, how do we get them, you know, to the point of being qualified? And then the second part, because you brought this up and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's, you know, obviously they have to be qualified, but even more important, how do we teach them to be, you know, empathetic? Because that's, you know, so important, and to bring the human element into the classroom. So how does ESI do those things?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a little like current versus future. So this is an area that as a company, we're very, very excited to continue to develop. It's the next frontier for us, is the part where we talk about how to take folks that are kind of like, yeah, I think I want to try this, and how do we get them there, right, to where they're successful in the classroom, ready to go. But what we're good at right now, what we're currently very good at, is helping explain the requirements. And then as people that do have an interest. So a lot of times what will happen is maybe a mom within a school district will say, hey, you know, I kind of want to substitute. And they'll talk to the school district. The school district will be like, hey, ESI's here. They actually service us. And so talk to ESI, right? So we'll help them figure out if they've got a bachelor's degree, which is a requirement. We'll help them as far as understanding how to get the state substitute certification and go through that administrative process, as well as with the Department of Public Safety, the fingerprint card process and the background checks and all of that, because we do want to make sure everybody's qualified and safe. But that's something we're very, very good at, is helping them, transition through there. And then from there, we work in close partnership with school districts that are our clients. And in many cases, they provide quite in-depth orientations, and they help mentorship programs and things like that. A lot of this is dependent upon the school district itself, but that's an area where I'd love to invest some more time and effort on our part, is if we're going to get good about inviting folks, then let's also figure out how to make that on-ramp to the district even smoother. So obviously in the current environment, the best I could do in about 3 weeks was come up with a video orientation. And it was a homegrown process. We got a lot of help, and we had our internal people kind of do the voiceover, and it's a riot. I mean, it really is. It is down home family style in the way that we do it. But at least it helps at the very beginning break down some of those major concerns that people have about, wow, you know, what is this thing going to be like? And what are all the buttons that I have to press? And what certifications, and on and on. But that's what our team's really good at, is being there to almost like a lighthouse to help them see the way forward. So, but we've got even more work to do there. That's an area I want to get even better at, is figure out how to help folks, you know, be really fired up about it, as well as be successful once they reach those classrooms, universally. But that's one thing COVID has done for us is we had to learn real fast. How do we relate to people when we can't bring them into a classroom and teach them?
So true. Another curiosity I had in the same line there. So substitutes obviously could go look at the postings at their local school, or they could look at an ESI avenue, and I'm sure there's other options. What are, you had mentioned there's some inherent efficiencies that you bring to districts. Can you explain a little bit, both from the perspective of I'm a potential substitute, why I would want to go with ESI as opposed to my local community school directly? And then what are some of those economies of scale, I assume, or just systematic tools that you put in place, much like your videos, and making sure people that show up are vetted and capable, and you're equipping them to the best of your ability. What does that process look like?
Yeah, well, you hit on something very important, Jeremy, that I point out is that really, and anybody who's listening to this, if they're getting it all fired up and hearing me talk about all this purpose in education, talk to your local school district, not even worry about ESI, because we'd love you to get involved, even if it's not with us. So that said, the story as to why folks enjoy working with ESI is because, as I mentioned, we've got all of these people that are experts at servicing individuals that are in this profession. So when you call us, we understand, we know what it's like, and we're going to take good care of you. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, we only work with the school districts that pick us, and that's the way we like it. And they work with those. We work with their subpools, and we call it their subpools. We don't try to create a giant subpool and see who pays the most and sub people out. We really do it in partnership with the district, so that it's cool. If you're subbing in Chandler, you're subbing in Chandler. Do you have an opportunity to sub in Higley? Sure, you probably could. You could sub in Mesa, wherever those things are. But we don't encourage that. We just take care of the people that work with us. From the school district side, so you hit on the efficiency point, right? Every school district is really good at sort of servicing their staff, but substitutes in particular are a unique group because it's a flexible schedule people. If you want to work one day, right? So we have worked with there's a couple different software systems, and depending on the district, they work with different software. So we're really good at the software side. We're really good at the payroll side as far as managing benefits and compliance. All of that stuff, we're fantastic. And so it takes all those headaches off of the school. And that's why the school is like, yeah, we like this. And then on top of it, since we get to work with, call it 60 different school districts, I have a really great seat on the bus. And all of the folks here, we get to see what are the best practices out there and apply those best practices. And we share them with the districts as well. So if we see somebody doing something really cool, we'll share it with our other clients. And we serve as a conduit of that information as much as we can.
Ooh, that's very interesting. What kind of mechanisms do you have in place to do that? Do you have how does that work? How do you actually get information to the districts? District A is doing this. You guys need to hear about it. It's super awesome. How do you make that happen?
It's extremely, extremely intricate and complex. And the software that we use, it's actually the phone. I know there's I'm going to blow all those people over there in CRM. They're going to be emailing me what are you doing, man? You're killing me. Yeah, we do use a CRM, but honestly, we've employed a group of client managers that our job is to just talk to the clients and have conversations on the phone, in person when it's safe, and that's how it gets shared. People ask us questions and we call them for no reason, just to say hi. And we take the time to just check in and not so much that we're trying to develop business, but just because they're people, it's the right thing to do, right? They're a stakeholder. So
absolutely.
It's a way to care for them. So yeah, that's our highly sophisticated, automated way. We'll buy some coffee cups and walk by and hand them to them and say, hey, we're here for you. What's going on? And then when they say, I got this problem, I can go, hey, guess what? This district down the street from you, they're doing it X, Y, Z way. And there's magic in there. So yeah, it's another example of conscious capitalism, right? It is not the most efficient way to do it, but it is by far there are so many added benefits to taking that time and effort.
I'm going to say it is the most efficient way. And I'm going to argue that it is the most efficient because, yes, we could do all this formal data gathering and data cleansing and different scenario analysis and comparisons, and then try to, have the best answer that we've, vetted and proven and whatever. Or we could just have trusted relationships, right? And so you build a relationship, you build a trust, and how much faster are things adopted and information taken and synthesized and put into practice when it's all based on trust, versus a model that I now have to convince you that it's proven because my computer said so. So I like it. I mean, I don't know if you saw me, but I'm like, my smile is getting so big, it's like almost, going off the.
But it's it's funny because one of my pet peeves is like surveys and stuff like that. I'm like, now granted, if I've got to talk to all 7,000 substitutes, there's a survey, right? But when it comes to clients, it's like, you want to survey them, you pick up the phone. The problem is it's emotionally challenging, right? Because you don't know, they might be upset with you that day. So it takes a little bit of courage to pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, what's going on? Way easier to send a MailChimp or send a survey or whatever, because you're not connected to the person. So there's this courage, right? It takes a little bit of an emotional lift to pick up that phone and call them and say, hey, I'm thinking about you right now. What's going on? But you're right. It's where the magic is.
Well, and if you know that so my role here, my purpose here is to, ensure that I help create the highest quality of education in Arizona. And I know that we create that critical piece. And I also believe that the only way for us to be our best is to hear the worst, right? Because the only way we're going to be our best is if we identify and fix the worst, right? And so I imagine that's where the courage comes from.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's true. That feedback is valuable. And there's two ways to look at it. It's either painful or it's a gift. And really, if you can get past the initial, like, oops, it's a gift.
It is. I was thinking the same thing. You were so quick to make it seem like it's just so simple, right? But simple isn't easy. And so it is simple. The end result is you need to be in communication with these people in a meaningful way. But it's not easy because you still have to have mechanism. It starts with intent, by the way, and then you still have to be able to have information share amongst your teams. You have a lot of dynamic information, especially today. What was working last month as people were preparing to open schools, and what's working now is we got a week or two of some schools that have real information in their arsenal as far as here's what's occurred and transpired, and here's what we've learned already in 1 and 2 weeks. Like those are not simple things, but at the end of the day, you have to decide and say, we're going to deliver it, and we're going to find the most reliable and easy mechanism to do it, and we're going to pick up the phone and share. So that's on point. That's fantastic. Sure. I'm curious, Andy, a question about you. You seem very well versed in the language of conscious capitalism. I always love to see the banner floating behind you like that. Fellow proud tribe members. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey of discovery and how you arrived as a member of our group?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Well, I'm just super humbled to be able to represent ESI today and talk about that. And that thing is a little yellow from being under the fluorescent light so long. I came about this years and years ago with, I was doing a little volunteer work with social venture partners, and there's this program called Fast Pitch here in the Valley. Awesome thing they were doing, right? So I run into this gentleman by the name of Scott McIntosh, right? And if you meet Scott in 30 seconds, you're like, yeah, whatever you need, Scott, I'm here for you, man. And I've been that hang-around guy, like on the periphery, just like a huge fan. It was like so many people that are new to this that might be just listen to us, meet us, and know us. They're like, I found my tribe, like I believe this my whole life. And now there's a group of people that I can share it with, right? Same, man, same here. And so a few conversations with Scott, getting to hang around Max 6 and get to know, the family, and going to some events early on before we even knew what was happening. And now with the energy that the volunteer group brings to this program, I'm just super stoked. So at the time, I'm doing a lot of consulting. So of course, initially I was like, oh, this is a great way for me to meet potential clients or meet people that share this love. But I found pretty quick, it was way more important to just have an avenue to be able to talk about the important things. And then, right over here, having my field guide, my conscious capitalism field guide and all of that. I kind of drank the Kool-Aid. So from ambassadorship and all of that, and trying to help my clients on that path. And now that I work for a company that is a huge believer in this, and the ownership here is just a big fan. We get to help at a new level, and hopefully link up with other businesses here. I know we're a big economic engine for Arizona, as big as we are, and some of the things we're doing. And so to have that kind of a platform to bring education, conscious capitalism together, you can probably hear my voice. I'm a little excited about
it. There's no doubt. It's pumping through your blood. Love it. You mentioned the rest of leadership jumped on board. I mean, is it overt? You've got the guide on your desk over there, or do people come in the room and say, what is that? Or, oh, that's what you were talking about in the last meeting when we saw that graphic. I mean, is it integrated that specifically, or it's just part of your culture because that's who you are?
Yeah, my leadership here, I've only been here just under 2 years. And so I believe that you just do it and then you name it, as opposed to naming it and then doing it. And I say that in the sense that I know every leader out there would agree with me, right? There's this part of you that's afraid to share some of these high ideals of conscious capitalism because of the potential hypocrisy, right?
Sure.
You can't be 100% conscious 100% of the time. There's always like, I could throw something in the garbage bin instead of the recycling bin, not even know what I'm doing, and unconsciously be hurting the environment, right? So there's a million of those examples. So as leadership, one of the first things you have to do is get over this fear of hypocrisy, right? Start doing it. Start being as conscious as you can, and then tell everybody, like, I don't know, I'm not going to be 100% right all the time. So that gets back to the feedback, right? When somebody brings it to my attention that we were somehow unconscious in something that we did, well, now we can correct it. But I will tell you, that's the hardest cultural thing to achieve, is a level of trust where people can speak truth to power and say, we're not being very conscious here, boss. We've got to fix this, right? So that is the journey that I think we're all on. And part of it is, certainly that awareness, but I think Sarah said it best, right? It's trusted relationships, And so the combination of those two things. So early on, it was about, hey, let's just do this. And now I'm getting to a place where I can even speak to it and say, hey, check this out. There's this group. Like, there are companies like WebPD, like we're talking about, our folks at Goodman's, right? There's all of these great companies doing some great things, and we're part of that culture. Now it's just all a benefit of that, with not worrying about hypocrisy, because we say it. We're going to do the best we can.
That's outstanding. Thanks for sharing that.
You're clearly, ESI is clearly within, the ranks of the other companies that you mentioned. I mean, some of the things that just, are still floating around in my head that seem to be the biggest indicators are, you do your job interview, and before you even finished your iced tea, when you were just talking that job, and you're just talking about consulting, before you even finish your iced tea, you're like, oh, I'm going to work with them someday, and full time. And then you talk about how when you're bringing people on board to your company, you're like, we have this unfair advantage. It's like you almost feel guilty, because when you're going out and recruiting people, you have this unfair advantage because you're such a great place. People can't resist, coming to work for you if they're lucky enough to get the offer. So clearly, you got the culture thing, on lock, and so. I say congrats, but I guess really the right word is, thanks. Thanks for being one of those workplaces. But we are running out of time. And so I have to thank you. Of course, thank you for, being a part of such a great organization, but also, thank you for, coming onto the show. And thank you to everybody who has been listening so far today and into the future. And of course, you can listen over and over and over again, and you probably should. This is definitely a good one. But we are the People and Profit Elevating Humanity Through Good Business program. And as a reminder, Conscious Capitalism Arizona and the Conscious Capitalism movement builds on the foundation of capitalism: voluntary exchange, entrepreneurship, competition, and free trade. While most recognize that these are essential to a healthy economy, conscious capitalism also includes the critical elements of trust, compassion, and collaboration.
Yeah, the movement challenges business leaders to rethink why their organizations exist and to acknowledge their company's roles in the interdependent global marketplace. I think all of the information Andy shared with us today personified that really well on how ESI shows up at market and how he as a leader demonstrates those very things. And so we hope that if you find interest in this and are not yet part of the movement, you can follow us on social media. We'll always share information, and you can become a member and join in with this community of people who are supporting one another and sharing tools in this journey. You can find us at CCAZ, CCAZ.arizona.org. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, and the very last thing is just to tell you about a couple of upcoming things. But I feel like I need to give Andy a chance to also say something one last time. Thank you, Andy, for being a part of the show. We appreciate you being here.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it, and we were just happy to be a humble part of the community and hopefully be of service to everybody that we come in touch with.
Okay, and the very last thing is to let everybody know that we have a couple of events. We Conscious Capitalism Arizona. Jeremy gave you the website. Go to the events page. You'll see that on September 2nd, we have one of our conscious business chats. So it's an outlet for people to be able to, just talk about conscious capitalism, jump on a virtual call with others who are interested in doing business just like you are. And then on September 9th, we have our also another virtual event, because just like everyone else, that's what we're doing these days. But we've got a bit of a relaunch, introduce our community to how we're doing things these days, to how we've moved to online, and how we're figuring out how to best continue to serve our community throughout all the social distancing. So go to the website, ccarizona.com, get to the events page, see what's coming up, and we will see you at a virtual event and also at a future podcast. So thank you. And that's it.
Thank you, Andy.